Go on, join in. Don't leave me on my own. Thank you. My name's Geoff Mackey. I work for an organisation I would presume very few of you have ever heard of. And I'm not going to waste your time by explaining who we are and what we do. What I'm going to do over the next 16 or 17 minutes, or until I get waved at or carted off, is I'm going to talk about building sustainability into strategy. And along with that, I also have the luxury of talking to an audience that for once I think will understand me. Normally I have to apologise for my accent when I stand on stage, but I think I'll get away with this one today. The other thing I've put on here is just to give you an idea, one of my favourite pictures is sustainability. Because the challenge for most of us is actually to think about what on earth we mean by sustainability. What does it mean and to who? The last speaker has just talked about greening the value chain. And actually I'm going to move back up the value chain. I'm going to talk about some of what we do in the value chain. As a business, this is what we are. We're the world's largest technology and chemical business. I'll put a few numbers up there so you give you an idea of what we do. For a business you've never heard of, I think the numbers will give you an indication that we've got our fingers in most pies. We've got a rough idea of what we're doing. And what I'd like to share with you is how to actually motivate and generate movement in an organisation as big and as science-driven as ours to actually move us forward. Our business consists of effectively 5 segments. I shall not bore you as I mentioned, but I'll mention a couple of things in particular to give you an idea who we are. Dispersions and Pigments. Most of you drive cars and ride bikes. The answer is we painted them. Most of you washed yourself and your clothes over the last couple of days. I'll not argue which is which, but there you go. The answer is it was our surfactants and detergents that went into those products, mostly in Unilever and Procter & Gamble. That's who we are. We're up the top end of the value chain. We're an R&D business. And the reality is, well, you can see for yourself.
And if those little somethings came together, we could do almost anything. Like windows that turn sunlight into electricity. It may seem like magic, but it's simply chemistry. The same chemistry that can make plastic bags compostable and wind turbines more durable. Good connections today can make for a better tomorrow. That's why we don't just make chemicals, we create chemistry. BASF, the chemical company.
We create chemistry. So whether we're talking about where we live in the world today and what we do, one of the challenges is what we do for the future. Whether you're talking about how you grow your food, how you package it, or the insulation on your homes, this is all part of our conversation going forward. It's also about personal choice. There are some things we know in the world today, and by the way, if anybody wants to argue about any of this, please do come and have a conversation afterwards, because I love a good conversation. You'll find me in bars having conversations all over Europe on some of this stuff. We know the world population is growing. The figure of 8 to 10 to 10.5 billion is bandied about. The answer is we know it's growing. We have a limited natural resource. I've heard the terminology today of people talking about natural. I don't know what natural means. Synthetic? I possibly know, but nature identical? There's a whole question of terminology, particularly when we're talking about a consuming public, because we all live here. We don't understand ecosystems properly, we never have, and I would argue we may never will. And the question of difference. I have the great luxury of working across about 15 countries, and trust me, they're different. If I go to Copenhagen, they have a very different conversation. We start by talking about water. If I go to England, I leave. So anyway, moving on. The reality is that we all make mistakes. We all know what a mistake looks like. The question is, what are we going to do about that mistake? And when we look at things like water, we all know there's an issue. But what are we doing about it? How do we build that into our business? How do we build those into our lives and those choices? And how do we motivate people to do different things? For example, I quite like this, so I thought I'd share it with you. Because actually this topic is more serious than anything we ever dealt with. This is about tomorrow and our tomorrow's tomorrow. We've only got one of these. That's the way it is. And we have to be concerned by that. And the topics we're talking about are not small topics. Some of these topics are life-threatening. I don't need to comment on that one. But as we sit here, and I look around, and I would not cast nasturtiums about people being well fed. But there's a real challenge about the choices we make in life, ladies and gentlemen. You know, you think about the evolution of our country over the last 10 or 15 years, and the choices we have. But we want more. We want more what? That's the challenge. There is new thinking out there, and I've heard some of this being talked about today. But some of this thinking to do with starting out with instruction and moving right through to end of life and reusability, some of this thinking is what our grandparents knew about. This is not new. This is just understanding and learning, and not making some of the mistakes that we're currently making again. Part of this conversation moves us on as well into the whole idea of circularity and reusing materials and not wasting them. Our business, trust me, doesn't waste things. We call it the Verbund. Everybody connects everything to everything else. The question of issues, and we can talk about the old-fashioned use of the Brundtland report and how do we actually classify sustainability. But the issues drive our business. The issues drive our business globally. We can talk about the sort of targets you would expect me to talk about. Greenhouse gases, water, occupational safety, because, by the way, you shouldn't kill your employees at work. That's illegal as well. But that's all part of the picture. But it's bigger than that. The question for us is the use of chemistry, the use of science in our world today, and where chemistry fits in enabling our society to exist. How do we build sustainability into that strategic thinking going forward? Today, we would argue that we stand tall. We work with our partners. Plan A, the way to live, the choices we make. But for us, it's all about expectations. How do we set those expectations both on a consumer level and within legislation? Because that's also one of the challenges. We have a consuming public who actually don't understand science very well. And yet we're full of scientists and engineers not explaining ourselves very well. And that's another part of the conversation. What you know today about the megatrends in this world, we actually turn into business. Now, this is not rocket science. Every one of you will understand what I'm putting up here. Because the reality is, if you've got a population increase, if you've got increased urbanization, a growth in the middle class, and by the way, we're getting older, particularly in Western Europe, what does that mean for your business? Because you can make some very obvious statements. And you can go and look at our website and see what we've done with our business in the last 10 or 15 years. Because the reality is the market needs are there. And you have to deliver to them. This is how you build sustainability into strategy. And it's not a political timescale with deference to the politicians who may have chosen to not be here today. 3 or 4 years is not a timescale. A generation is a timescale. And that's something else in business we have problems getting them to understand. We integrate sustainability into our business strategies. And by the way, if this is news to anybody out there, please go and read something. You know, what are our needs? What do we have to do? Let's make a plan. There you go, a sustainable MBA. The reality is we've actually taken our products, and I've given you an idea how big our business is. We've taken our products and we've segmented them. We've segmented them into products that, frankly, some of them need to be challenged by us, and some of them need to be pushed better because they add value from a sustainability perspective. And part of that conversation, and again, it gives you an idea, we're actually now at the stage where we've covered nearly all our sales. We're working on it. Bear with us. But the reality is, across the world, we are now looking at driving sustainable solutions, driving better ways of doing things within what I've already shared with you. The reality of the situation is you can make a difference. And some of these are quite simple. For example, one of our products, a fuel additive, because about 13% of our entire global production goes into automotive. If you think automotive should exist, is a different conversation. But we can actually talk about putting a new solvent in, reducing the hazard level. We can actually talk about, for example, in our side of things, a new coating for paper. These are the steps we all can choose to make. Small steps, incremental differences. These are the sorts of things we can do. And for us, it's all about building this into our management. All our management, our entire business across the world will recognize what this is about, because it also reduces our business risk and delivers opportunities. This is what we can do. These are the sorts of things we can all do. From my side of things, I can give you examples in all sorts of ways. And again, I'm not going to bore you with going through these line by line, but as you can tell now, I can talk for hours on this sort of stuff. However, what do you want to do with automotive? The answer is make it lighter, make it more efficient, possibly go to electricity, look at the fuel concept. These are the work, or this is the work we're doing with all sorts of the businesses. And if you go and look at who we are, these are the businesses we're working with. If you want to talk about biodiversity, we've got biodiversity farms across Europe. And we ask people to go and see how to put biodiversity back into our landscape. We can talk about, well, we could also talk about biodegradability. We would talk about tools. Do you want something that's biodegradable or not? Because actually, if you're going to keep an agricultural pesticide, you don't want it in a biodegradable container. You want it in a container that's not going to go anywhere for about 50 years. And that's another part of the conversation. Do people really know the answer? Do people really know the question they're trying to answer? It's all about understanding what's behind that. For example, how do you want to build a house? From our side of things, we've been building eco-friendly, we don't like that term, we've been building low-energy houses now for 10 years. We've built houses that have running costs of less than €200 a year. And these are perfectly normal houses. The problem with selling them is they look like a house. That's one of the challenges we have. The challenge we also have going forward, and in my summing up, because I'm aware I've been allowed a short time to speak, is that we have to be very conscious in our society that when we're talking about sustainability, this is not the mental picture we have. We need to be very, very aware that we can do better than that. From my perspective, is science good or bad? The answer is it's science. It's about innovation, it's about development, it's about metrics, it's about understanding the application of what we're trying to do. Can I also suggest this to you over the next few weeks? Give you a wee story. When I got married a few years ago, I gave my wife 12 dozen roses when we got back from honeymoon. They were wooden. I told her they were the last roses she was ever going to get. And she changes them every 18 months when the dozen in the pot starts to wear out a wee bit. Certain things are not a requirement for human life, but we require them. Gentlemen, I see many of you in the audience with ties on. What a useless waste of material and textiles. Alcohol is not a requirement for human life. but we choose it. These are the choices we make, ladies and gentlemen. And this is the thing we have to think about going forward. We have the choice as a society, as a consumer, as a professional in what you do. You can choose. The important thing is understand why you're choosing what you're choosing. I like this. Because when I'm talking about sustainability and motivation, I use this. Which step have you reached today? The answer is, try it and do it. There's nothing to stop any of us leaving here today and taking one piece of information and making a difference. And if every one of us makes one little difference, did you know that's a lot of difference? We only have one planet. It's important we look after it for all our sakes, for a brighter future, a more sustainable future for all of us. Thank you.